Hi everyone, it's Andrew here. So just like a bear protecting her cubs, a mother naturally wants the best for their child and to protect them. It's human nature. And when it comes to babies, the motherly instinct kicks up a level and becomes a dominant drive and focus of daily life. I've always thought that the baby niche is one of the best markets to target because pricing isn't as important as the safety of the baby. When kids get a bit older, well, then they can eat chips and chocolate and it's not a big deal, but a newborn baby has everything that's ingested highly scrutinized. And mothers are even really careful about the diet they have themselves because it can affect the breast milk they feed their babies. So baby formula is a very important product for the new mother to get right. And so that brings me to A2 Milk, and it's obviously a milk company, but mostly a baby formula company based out of New Zealand, and it's listed on the Australian and the New Zealand stock exchanges. Now, before I get started, if you want to access international stocks like the A2 Milk company on the Australian Stock Exchange, then there's a link in the description below to Interactive Brokers. This is by far the best and most reliable trading platform on the market that gives you access to many international stocks. Look, the broker you choose is very important, so please think about it and do your research. Brokers do go bankrupt. And also in the description is my e-magazine subscription, which is $10 a month. And this is where my market commentary, my watch lists, my intrinsic values are all updated. I believe it is far more valuable than $10 a month. Look, I have the February edition in the link where you can check it out and see what's included. And if you could like and subscribe to the channel, it would help me out a lot. Okay, let's talk about exactly how the A2 Milk business works. If you don't have a farming background, it might be a little difficult to understand. There are intricacies in the farming industry that make conditions, well, slightly unreliable. For example, extreme weather events like droughts and other uncontrollables like diseases can put the supply from farms more variable than it is reliable. Dairy in New Zealand is relatively reliable, but is still vulnerable to the occasional big problem. A disease could go through and the supply would fall apart very quickly. So just remember that when you go into farming related businesses. Now, A2 Milk sells their products in Australia, New Zealand, China, and America. I won't go into the science in detail, but simply put, the focus of the company is to only provide A2 protein cow's milk rather than the regular cow's milk, which is half A1 and half A2 protein. And the reason they focus only on this A2 protein milk and cut out the A1 protein is that the A2 protein is apparently better for you than the A1-A2 mixture. Now, this is debatable, which I'll go into when I get to the competitive advantage. Now, regarding the supply chain side of the business, I think this is actually really important to understand because I think that a business selling milk and baby formula, well, it needs to have really high quality control standards. So even just in the last week, an American baby formula company had a health scare and had to recall all these products. So having sick babies is just a reputational killer and something the media will jump all over. So making sure the quality standards are high is actually one of what I think is the most important factors in the long term, the longevity of this business. At any moment, if a mistake is made, this business could blow up. Anyway, so basically what happens is that farmers sell their milk to a company called Synlait in New Zealand. This is a publicly listed company and A2 Milk has about a 20% stake in this. Worth today's price is about 135 million New Zealand dollars. All right, so let's make a note of that so we remember that for later. So Synlait do the processing in their capital intensive factories and produce the products for A2 Milk. The processing is not done by A2 Milk, and A2 Milk has focused its investments in sales, marketing, and brand development. And it typically looks to outsource the processing aspect of the supply chain, well, unless there is a strategic rationale for an investment. So when I first heard about this, my first question was whether Synlait are going to drop the ball at some stage. Is this a reliable supplier? Well, A2 Milk did buy 75% of another supplier in Matura Valley Milk in 2021, so just last year, for 268 million New Zealand dollars. Let's call that $250 million and keep note of that as well. And this strengthens up the supply and capacity for the future. Now, from all reports, Synlait have extremely extensive audits regularly done on their operations, but it's always going to be a risk. They can reduce this risk and they haven't had any issues yet, but it's still a risk of like a disease or something bad happening to the supply. Now let's talk about the industry that A2 Milk are playing in. Look, I'm going to focus mostly on the baby formula because that is what I know most about so far. They obviously have milk and other products as well, but I think the baby formula is where the growth driver is. Now, this idea was introduced to me by investing with Tom, and he knows this business far better than me. So please watch his videos on A2 milk for far more information. So it was in the back of my head, but I just never felt comfortable digging into the company as it just seemed too risky at first glance. So I was just put off because the product is actually a perishable. And the reason I don't like perishables is because, look, it just can sometimes, if there's a supply chain shock or something goes wrong, they have to destroy inventory. It doesn't just sit there for years and still be okay. Not something like Campbell's soup, for example. But my sister had her second baby around 6 months ago, and I finally was able to spend some time with her. My sister was supplementing her daughter with A2 infant formula, so I started asking her about why. Why A2 and not all the other options? Well, she firstly said straight up, it's the best. So I asked, well, why? She said that both her first and now second child have zero issues with it. She read online that A2 was the best. I said, okay, but why? Why did you think it's the best? And she said, well, look, A2, I just don't have to worry about it being poor quality and it doesn't irritate my kids. And she went on to tell me that she would only buy A2 infant formula and would drive from shop to shop if she had to in order to buy it. My mum would even buy some of it in her local town if she saw it, just to make sure that my sister had it. So just for my sister, there is almost complete brand loyalty to A2 milk. So even though the science on A2 milk is not strong at all, the brand loyalty is very high. And like I said at the start of the video, there are just going to be a lot of mothers out there who will spend the money to get the best stuff for their babies. It's a psychological driver that is just far stronger for a lot of mothers and they're happy to pay up for it. A2 milk is considered this ultra premium baby formula, like the Maserati of baby formulas. So just having A2 on the packaging is a strong brand, but also I think the made in New Zealand part helps a lot as well. You see, the New Zealand image is considered especially high quality in China, which by most world standards, I think New Zealand is high quality. Consumer demand for healthy products is also a trend that helps A2 as well. But the big driver for the future is just this rising middle class in Asia and specifically China. Infant birth rates are declining there, but wealth is increasing. So more and more Chinese people are going to be able to provide the best baby formula for their child. So we have this New Zealand high quality image. We have consumers wanting healthier products, and we have that rising middle class in Asia and China in particular. And then add in that psychological drive of new mothers to get the best for their babies. And it all leads to a fantastic industry that appears to be highly profitable and highly loyal. So the macro trends here are these strong tailwinds as long as the reputation for New Zealand and dairy stays clean. Now, how large the total addressable market is, well, I guess that's difficult to put a number on, but with the market share in China of, I think they're at about 2% right now, there's a lot more runway to go in China, and building the brand in China is just a huge opportunity. Then consider the more emerging Asian countries where New Zealand quality is going to be really important. Plus they've got the US market as well that they're just starting to launch into. Look, it's big enough that we don't have to put numbers on it. I think the opportunity is there. All right, to just get you a little more interested, A2 milk has, generally speaking, had an amazing past decade. Not only have revenues been growing like this, but when looking at the balance sheet, equity has been growing like this. But it's actually the last year or so that this perfect picture started to look, well, not so perfect. And the business has been real rattled. Oh, and then with that Synlait stake of 135 million and the 250 million New Zealand dollar stake in Matura Valley Milk, let's add the net cash on top of that, which is 667 million New Zealand dollars. So that's about $1 billion we can take off the market cap. So the enterprise value is about 2.5 billion New Zealand dollars. So we have a business that can produce 300 million in earnings with an enterprise value of only 2.5 billion, potentially growing at 30% per annum like they have in the past. They can get through this period that they're going through right now. This is a very attractive opportunity. Okay, there is still so much to unpack, and I do want to go through why the business has had a terrible 18-month period. I want to go through how strong this competitive advantage might be, and maybe it's a commodity, or is it something greater than that? I want to go into the science of A2 milk, and I want to go into why there's so much management turnover, and evalually I'll get to evaluation. All right, well, thanks for staying to the end of this one. Stay tuned for the next episode.